Anyone else see the video of Brock leaving the game on Sunday? He's leaving Levi Stadium, and he's got somebody with him. I don't know if it's a strength and conditioning person or whatever, but whoever it is twice his size. And Brock Purdy's got a backpack on. He's wearing joggers, and he's got his hands in his pockets. And he's walking out of the stadium, literally looks like a kid walking home from school. Like, go by any high school today in the Bay Area at 3 o'clock and just watch it, and, beep-a-da-boop-a-da-bop.
He's just kicking a rock.
Just like, whatever. Like, we're going to the playoffs for the 2 seed. And he looks like he's 4'11", and his shoulders are not broad, and he's unassuming. Now, you compare him to Mad Bum. Others would compare him to Joe Montana. I know that's hard because I don't mean that in terms of his greatness. I mean that in terms of the stature and the cool under pressure. This is a definite observation that I think is very key to the Brock Purdy conversation, which is that certain people in high leverage situations don't have the same heartbeat as others. And I mean that in a good way.
Yeah.
Camilo Doval, who hasn't had tons of success, he's been fine, but they joke with him about it because it's the 9th inning and it's a 1-run game and there's runners at first and second. And Camilo looks like, what's going on? Like he's just sitting there.
And Brandon Belt is still getting criticized for his hangdog, demeanor in that same sort of way.
Right. Crawford, a lot of the Giants just are, thank you. They just kind of have whatever, like flat face, emoji face in these big moments. And Brock seems to be one of those guys. And I would bet that at some point over these next 3 weeks, that's going to come in handy. It's going to come in real handy.
Well, I wonder if he's able to keep that countenance. Certainly, as things go bad, if they potentially get rough, if he makes that mistake that we haven't seen him make yet, where maybe it's a fumbled snap, or maybe he doesn't see the pressure coming from the backside, and it's a strip sack or a pick six, or something really, really bad happens, then we'll see if he truly can keep this countenance. So far, he hasn't really faced any adversity even close to the level where he might be tested. You're down 10 to Vegas.
Yeah, it's not
You're already a playoff team.
Right,
Big
it wasn't
deal.
The whole world wasn't going to come crashing down if they lost that game. That's true.
Right.
But it was exactly what we asked for him to face.
Right.
We knew at some point,
doubt.
second half, double digits on the road, and he was fine. He was like, we're good here.
And so far, so good, no doubt.
Yeah.
But he hasn't really faced that real adversity of, playoff game, and it's your fault.
Right.
And I'm not saying that he's going to crack and start going Phillip Rivers on people or go into a full Aaron Rodgers mode where you're throwing your teammates under the bus. I don't know if that's going to happen. And the good thing, Mark, the guy had a ton of games in college at a high level to where he's already been through this sort of a leadership adversity role.
Right. This guy, I'd have to look, but in 4 years, I would imagine, let's see, Iowa State. This guy played some road games, whether it's the Oklahomas, the Michigans, the Ohio States of the world, whatever. He's been in environments like that, and I'm sure that will help coming up here in this month of January. I'll also say this because I promised it. So I texted my guy in Vegas. I'm like, all right, which 49er is announced as out and it moves the line the most? And the answer is Purdy, but with a caveat. He goes, part of the reason it's Purdy is not just because he's playing well. It's because the drop from him to his backup is more significant than maybe some other players. So the only other name that came up in the conversation was Christian McCaffrey. And I know a lot of people are bringing up that name. I would submit to you, though, that it's actually obvious, no matter which way you're looking at it, is the gap between Christian McCaffrey and Eli Mitchell smaller or larger than the gap between Brock Purdy and Josh Johnson? It's smaller. It's smaller. So, yes, part of this is just who's your backup. Part of it is what position do you play? But a very big part of it that I feel is being dismissed is the way Brock Purdy has managed this offense and how it's looked with him at the helm. We keep saying anybody can do this, and the fact of the matter is that in the Kyle Shanahan era, no one else has. So why do we keep saying, well, any old person can go out there and do what Brock Purdy's doing? Nobody's done it. Nobody's done it. Jimmy hadn't done it. Trey hadn't done it. Beathard hadn't done it. Mullins hadn't done it. Nate Sudfeld, no matter who else you want to throw in there, and I know there hasn't been any other, whatever, quote-unquote elite player, but no one else has been able to be like, I'm going to grab this, and we're going to score 35 points a game every single week. So, yeah, I get what you're saying, which is that to you, the MVP of the team, the jersey that you'd want to wear, the one who brings you to your feet the most, might be Christian McCaffrey. But the most important player on the field for this team, and quite frankly, just about all the others, is a quarterback who's playing well. Like, not even all the playoff teams can say that. I don't know if Geno Smith is playing well. Doesn't look like it.
When you go across, we did this yesterday with the NFC, and you don't have a lot of world beaters at quarterback. Daniel Jones hasn't done anything in the playoffs. Kirk Cousins has one postseason victory. Put Tom Brady aside, the greatest of all time, but other than that, you don't have a lot of experience in the NFC. Dak has one playoff win, and he's thrown more picks per pass than any quarterback in the league this year. So there's a lot of question marks across the board. I'll say this, though, about your argument and your odds maker conversation. If Jimmy Garoppolo were healthy enough to be the clipboard holding backup, the drop off from Brock Purdy to Jimmy Garoppolo is not nearly as significant as the drop from McCaffrey to Mitchell, the drop from Trent Williams to Brunskill, the drop from Kittle to Charlie Warner.
But to move the line,
the rest
do you think it would not? It would move the like.
And again, this is a different conversation because the line is it's an obtuse thing.
It's a perception.
It's completely,
a perception,
and it's a perception created in order to mitigate risk from the casino's standpoint.
Here's where I'll meet you. I'll meet you that it's an unfair conversation because one of them's a quarterback and he has the ball on every play. And
the backup is a guy who's never. I mean, he's 12 years in for 17 teams.
But let's go if it's Jimmy. Even if it's Jimmy, because it's not just Jimmy coming in. It would be Jimmy coming in off of injury, having not played for 2 months or month and a half.
Yeah.
Right? And when we saw Jimmy come off the shelf early in the year and have his first start against Denver, it was a complete disaster. So I think if it went Purdy to Jimmy, I actually do think there would be line movement. If it went from McCaffrey to Eli Mitchell, would there be line movement? Very few players move a line. Maybe there would be, but it wouldn't be much.
Yeah, I don't think there'd be much.
Like, I don't think if Eli Mitchell were starting this game, I don't think anybody's like, well, now I think the Seahawks can win. I don't think that at all. I mean, if McCaffrey were out in this game, what do you think the spread would be? Right now it's 10, 9.5, 10.
If it's 10 right now and McCaffrey's out, spread's still 10.
Yeah, might go down a point.
If Kyle Shanahan loses his laminated play sheet and he suddenly
goes down to 2.
Exactly. So, I mean, I think that because of Kyle Shanahan and what we've seen from this offense pre-McCaffrey, with McCaffrey, you could rightly say, I'll just put Debo back there.
Yeah.
You got Debo, you got Mitchell, you got Mason. You've got enough to where even if you didn't have McCaffrey, there wouldn't be that much of a step down.
Brock to Josh Johnson, what happens to the number?
It goes to probably 7.5.
I think maybe even lower.
I still think it's a touchdown.
I mean, you're talking about a guy who's like barely ever started a game in his life in the NFL.
But you still feel like they would be able to run the football enough to where, I mean, they're not going to be, hey, Seattle's favored by 2 all of a sudden because we don't have Brock Purdy.
You know what the weirdest part of this text conversation was with my guy in Vegas? Again, odds maker. He fires back and he goes, so a part of this conversation is going to potentially be irrelevant soon because Jimmy's going to be back. And he didn't mean that in terms of the drop-off from Brock to Jimmy. Vegas's perception, at least from one odds maker, was that when Jimmy gets back, he might be the 49er quarterback. And I keep hearing this from places outside of San Francisco, national debate shows. Now I got an odds maker saying, and I'm looking at these people going, you're not watching, are you? You're an odds maker. And so I know he's watching. He's an incredibly smart guy. And
it's his job to watch.
It's his job. I go, are some of you under the impression that the 49ers will get to January 29th in a road game at Philadelphia and even pause for a millisecond at the idea that an available Garoppolo would be their choice to start at quarterback? I mean, maybe if they win the next 2 games 3-0. That would literally be the only.
Right, and Brock has 3 turnovers in each game, and he suddenly looks like Mr. Irrelevant again.
Where we sit today, is someone under the impression that the Niners would knowingly and by choice start Garoppolo?
Go back to Garoppolo.
Over Purdy?
In a vacuum, I can understand where they're coming from, but let's take a step back and think about what the Niners have done vis-a-vis the treatment of one James Garoppolo. Garoppolo leads you to the NFC Championship game, and you tell him, thank you, next, Ariana Grande. And by the way, we've already spent 3 first-round picks to get your replacement. So I know you did great last year, and you led us all the way within 1 drive of the Super Bowl, but we don't want you anymore. Go ahead and play on the kiddie field while we try to trade you. We can't trade you. You're still not our starter. We're going with Trey Lance. Now we have no choice. Now we got to start you. Brock comes in and wins 5 straight games, and now you're just going to go back to Jimmy Garoppolo? It makes sense outside of the market if you look at it and go, well, Garoppolo's won more. He's done more in the postseason. Yeah. But when you look at what the Niners have done in terms of the treatment of Garoppolo and what Kyle Shanahan thinks of Garoppolo, there's no way they go off of Brock Purdy.
And just watch the last 6 games.
Exactly.
I don't know. Like, do you want to go into the national championship, the NFC championship game? Do you want to score 35 or 25? I mean, essentially,
35 is better.
I
Mark.
like 35. I'll take 35. It looks to me like that's what we're dealing with. You want 25 or do you want 35? I'll take 35. That's just me. But apparently, this is a discussion of some sort. It's not. It's not. I mean, listen. Look at even the history of the league. When someone catches fire, you don't play with the fire. Tony Romo came back. We'll stick with Dak. Right? Alex Smith came back. We'll stick with Colin Kaepernick.
But you don't lose your job due to injury, Mark. That's the old adage in sports.
Yeah. You do.
Harbaugh looked at that and said, you do, by the way, and we're going to the Super Bowl with the backup.
Right.
And it's the same case here. You don't lose your job due to injury. So Jimmy G's back healthy for the NFC Championship game, and Shanahan goes, you know what? Darn it, you're right. You don't lose your job due to injury.
Gosh.
Jimmy, hey, Trey, if you're available, we'll go with you, Trey.
Now, I will say this. If you're someone who sort of believes in karma or just the way that the story goes, because we're here now and the playoffs have arrived and we think we know how the storybook ends. We think that Brock Purdy runs the 49ers to the playoffs, wins at least 2 games, and then we take our chances after that. We think we know. How many other times this year have we thought that we knew what was going to go on in the quarterback position? Would it be wild for me to suggest that it just feels like this is something that would happen to these 49ers and to the person named Jimmy Garoppolo, that he would get cleared for January 29th and that something would happen that gets him into the damn game and the 49ers are suddenly back on his back again?
It seems outlandish and ridiculous and far-fetched, but to think that it couldn't possibly happen, and there's something about the Jimmy Garoppolo angle. So Brock Purdy wins this weekend, and you go out and you win in the divisional round, and something happens, though. A little tweak of the ankle or a little flare-up in his oblique or whatever it is, and it's like, geez, he's questionable, and here he comes, number 10, handsome as all get out, and he's back under center. I mean, it's a ridiculous thought.
It just gives me. I mean, it's the only time in my life of watching Jimmy Garoppolo, my shoulders get tight as you're sitting here saying the scenario. I do not want that to happen.